Thank you, Father. I'm Kevin Appleby. I'm the Director of Migration Policy and Public Affairs for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. I've been asked to update you on immigration reform, of course, which is the ultimate integration program. Before I do, let me first thank Don for pulling this together. It's quite an all-star collection of Catholic advocates here. It's great that we're all together to discuss this important issue. And also like to acknowledge Bishop DiMarzio, who came down from Brooklyn. He was leaving to go back to Brooklyn, but we want to thank you for your leadership. Really, Bishop DiMarzio was the trailblazer on immigration advocacy in the Catholic Church, and without his leadership, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you. Timing is everything. So, of course, what I want to do is just give you a quick summary of where we are in immigration reform. As you know, last year we got a bipartisan bill through the Senate, S-744. It wasn't a perfect bill, but it was one that came close to meeting a lot of the requirements the bishops have laid out. And then the House did not act last year, but they did start off with a bang this year with when they issued principles on Republican principles on immigration reform in the third week of January when they were at their retreat in Cambridge, Maryland, which was well received by many quarters. There were, of course, many who did not think they went far enough, including the Catholic bishops, but it was certainly a start, and there was a lot of excitement around the fact that these principles would eventually lead to legislation and to a debate this year in the House. A week later, of course, as you all know, Speaker Boehner threw some cold water on that momentum by saying that it would be very difficult to pass immigration reform this year. He didn't say impossible, which is actually important, but he said it'd be very difficult, and his excuse was that his caucus did not trust the president to enforce the law. Take that as you will. Why did this happen? Why was there such a quick turnaround of only a week before the speaker had to retreat? Well, first of all, from what we've heard is in that meeting, it was clear that the caucus, the Republican caucus, is divided into threes. There's a third of the caucus that will never support immigration reform as we see it. Their idea of immigration reform is more enforcement, etc., and likely will never change their minds. There's a third in the caucus who support the principles, but do not believe in the timing. They don't think that this is the year to do it, and I'll get into some of those reasons. And then, of course, there's another third that support the principles and are okay with the timing in terms of doing it this year, either before, well, likely before the general elections in November. And that includes many members of the leadership, which is good for us. So my interpretation of Speaker Boehner's comments were not that immigration reform is dead this year, but that he was trying to buy some time. One thing that we underestimate, which we always do, is the ferocity of the opposition. Even though we outnumber them, they are very ferocious in their opposition and very well organized and have a lot of money. And the backlash, which we anticipated, was even more than we thought it would be from that quarter. But the other thing that we didn't anticipate was that there were those who were in the middle who want to support this, who want to see it happen, objected to doing it now. And that's where I think we can make inroads moving forward. I would argue that immigration reform this year is still alive. And this is why. First of all, to do it in 2015 and 2016 will be more difficult because of the presidential primaries. Second, both parties need this. Not just the Republicans, but the Democrats need it as well. The Democrats need to deliver, and the Republicans need to get it off the table. And thirdly, as we saw in the recent CNN poll, 80% of Americans support immigration reform. So we're making inroads with the American public. I think it's almost a no-brainer at this point. And that's something that won't be lost on the legislators, because there is a backlash there if they don't do anything as well. So the fundamentals are in our favor in terms of getting something done this year. But what we have to do of course, is keep pushing. We can't lower our heads, say this is too difficult, we're going to go home. We have to focus on keeping the pressure up, because the key to victory is getting those third in the middle who are uncertain about timing, changing their minds to say we have to do it now. And there are dates on the calendar will help them move in that direction. Certainly when the primaries are over and some of them are free from that burden, could be a window of opportunity. We saw recently a couple of encouraging signs where Peter King in Long Island, who's long questioned immigration and immigration reform for security reasons, came out in his district and said he supported path to citizenship. Senator Dean Heller, who is a Republican in Nevada, gave a speech in Reno saying the immigration reform would pass this year and that all the Nevada delegation would vote for it. So these are two elected officials who are in the middle and who are giving encouraging signs. So we have to push forward, I think, and work on those who want to be with us, but because of the political timetable, the political calendar, and what they're facing in their districts or in their states is holding them back right now. So with that analysis, there could be something moving after the primaries. That would be late spring, early summer. Or they could wait till the lame duck. It's not unheard of in the lame duck for them to do some things. Or they could do a combination. They could pass some things in the House and do a final bill in the lame duck. Let me talk just briefly about the principles, since let's suspend disbelief and assume this is going to happen, and talk about where the principles are and where we need to improve them. As I said, it's a beginning point. Certainly it fell well short of where the bishops are, but that doesn't mean that they can't be improved, that there can't be compromise with the Senate, and we can't get close to where we need to be. Of course, the path to citizenship is a big problem in the Republican principles. There is no path to citizenship. All they would get is legal status and some sort of work authorization. There was nothing that would bar them from citizenship under the current channels. But there is no path to citizenship, and that's of concern. Where do we want to get in the House? I frankly don't think we're going to get a path to citizenship in any bill through the House. The votes aren't there. But we could do enough so that we remove some of the barriers to citizenship that are currently in place, such as the backlog, such as the 3 and 10-year bars, and other things that they can do to sort of ameliorate some of those problems and allow people to get to a green card faster. Second problem is the idea of these triggers, enforcement triggers. There's language in the Republican principles that talk about these certain triggers on the border have to be met before there's a legalization. And some of the advocates have interpreted those lines differently, but it's unclear exactly what would happen if the triggers have to happen before anyone gets legal status, or whether there would be a probationary legal status up front as the triggers being put in place. That's unclear. I'm going to go with the assumption that legal status wouldn't happen until after the triggers kicked in, and that could be 4, 5, 6 years. And if that's the case, that's something that the bishops would oppose. Certainly we'd advocate that at least there should be some sort of legal status up front. Otherwise, why are we in the fight? Thirdly, there's a movement away from the family legal immigration system. That's certainly true in the Senate bill in S-744. The fourth preference is eliminated altogether. The third preference was cut in half. In the House bill, in the House proposals, both those categories are gone. Brothers and sisters and adult married children are both gone, and we don't get anything back for them. It just goes into employment. So this is something we're going to have to certainly work on. At least in the Senate bill, you have LPRs get into the immediate relative category, so they're not capped. And there's some other things that he did to tweak and to ease the pain of eliminating the fourth preference. So there's a movement generally away from family to employment in the immigration system. That's something that's really in our wheelhouse that we can argue. The DREAM Act language didn't seem as generous as what was in the Senate. It requires a college degree, whereas in the Senate it's a 2-year college attendance. So that's something that I think we can improve. And there were some other statements that were unclear how we interpret. One was there'd be no tolerance for visa overstayers or illegal crossers. Now, I don't understand quite what that means. Does that mean we don't have an asylum system anymore? Does it mean there's no prosecutorial discretion? It's unclear what that's meant in the principles. And again, this is a political document, so it could mean nothing. It could just mean something that they want to say. And also, there was the mention of eliminating any presidential authority to use executive action to protect those, for example, who are undocumented. And that's, again, a political statement, a political document. I wouldn't read much into that, and I would doubt that any administration would sign something with that in it. But those are there. What are we doing at the Bishops' Conference of the Justice for Immigrants to try to change this momentum and get us so that we have a shot in the spring or later in the year? First of all, we're targeting about 50 Catholics, mostly Republicans, some Democrats, who are in that middle third, who support immigration reform in principle, but have concerns about doing it now. Trying to make the argument that we need to do it this year, that it's important to do it this year, and it's in their political interest. We're working with the Justice for Immigrants, and many of my colleagues are here today to try to push those targets in the middle to get to yes this year. We're also going to reach out to those districts and those dioceses to help deep drill those targets as well. Do events, do visits, do letter writing campaigns. Second, we're working with the evangelical leaders on focusing on House members. The evangelical church has sort of been a late entry into the debate, but a very powerful one, and one that really talks to some of those in the House, especially on the Republican side. And we're joining with them to try to do advocacy. We have a sign-on letter which is going out this week with leaders of Catholic bishops as well as evangelical leaders. It's going to the Hill. We're also doing some visits in the second week of March, and we'll probably have a press event then. And we're also talking about doing some joint organizing in target districts over the next 2 or 3 months. The bishops are very active as well. One thing that they want or planning to do at the end of March is visit the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona, do a tour of the border, have a mass, and have a press event. Sort of mirrored on Pope Francis's visit to Lampedusa, where he laid a wreath or threw a wreath in the water and prayed for the migrants. So it's sort of to call attention to the United States Lampedusa, where we see about 6,000 to 7,000 people die over the last 10 years. So stay tuned for that. We also have our National Migration Conference coming in July. The timing could be perfect if the House does move to that, and I encourage you all to attend that. So I guess the theme of my little talk here is not to give up hope, not be discouraged. I've said from the beginning we're going to have a lot of near-death experiences in this debate. You know, the speaker said this would be difficult, tell us something we don't know. But I think this is one of these moments where we really have to dig deep and keep pushing, and good things will eventually happen. So thank you again for your interest and for all you do on behalf of immigrants, and I can take some questions.
Hi, Kevin. Is this on? I'm Vanna Slaughter with Catholic Charities of Dallas. And I'd just like to ask the question, I may be a lone voice in the room, but should we not be concerned about what we will get if reform is revived and brought back? The more I think even about the Senate bill, and I can't imagine us getting a legalization program as generous as the Senate bill from the House, but even as I think about the Senate bill with the backdrop of the $48 billion enforcement package that goes with it, you carry that out over a timeline, and it's very concerning to me, having worked in the trenches with cases. Just the longer the timeline before the final outcome is achieved, the more people you lose along the way. And the construct of the 6-year RPI status plus 4 years RPI status plus another year to apply for permanent status and on is very worrisome to me. that people, and also the requirement that they would have to choose either to take that route or a family route. It's very worrisome to me that at the end of the day, of the 11 million people we want to help, how many of them will really get that outcome? Could you speak to that?
Sure. Well, I mean, as a general matter, you know, I can throw out some trite phrases for you. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And you know, you're always going to have to pay a price in the way the political system's set up here. You're not going to get the perfect bill unless, you know, even with the party the Congress in control, the Democrats, we wouldn't get a perfect bill. We'd have to pay some sort of enforcement price. First of all, Corker-Hoven will likely not be in the final package. I think there's agreement in both the Senate and the House that that's not going to happen, and that was used just to get it over the finish line in the Senate. More than likely, there would be the McCall bill, which is more targets than resources. So yeah, we're just. I mean, basically, your question is, should we not push forward because we might not get something? We might have to be confronted with something we have to do. I would push back and say, what's your alternative?
Well, I
admit
it would be a gamble, but I mean, if we cool off a little while, talk about Edward Snowden a little more, and Syria and Ukraine, and then come back to the debate under different circumstances, could we get better and start off on a clean slate again after all this rhetoric that we're in?
2 or 3 years ago, I would have said that, but then now I've been through this so much.
And
you know how hard. Let me just speak. You know how hard it is to get to this point? I mean, it'll be 10 years before we get to this point, and we're looking into the abyss otherwise.
Where will we be then after RPI status is over and we have still 6 million people that are out there undocumented? What do we do then?
Well, I mean, we can go around and around and around. I mean, we'll do our best. I mean, we can take a vote. We can give up right now and keep the status quo, or we can try to get legal status for people so that they're protected from deportation and fight the fight later. I mean, I think this movement's only going to get stronger. I mean, if we got a bill this year, it's not the end of the road. We've got next year to advocate, and we got the year after that. So, I mean, you know, in 6 years, we could be in a much stronger position, and there wouldn't be an issue there. But we have to get the ball rolling, and we have to provide relief to people. You know, or we're in a place where we're going to continue to see the family separation that we see now.
Kevin, I understand that President Obama is going to Rome to visit the Pope at the end of this, in March. Is the USCCB or your office or the Conference of Bishops, the Migration Office, doing something to bring the issue of deportation in that conversation?
Well, I mean, there's a chain there, but the nuncio is the one that usually... Yeah, let me get on the phone. Yes, we're going to provide some talking points. Whether they get all the way over there, I don't know. But it goes to the nuncio and everything else. And but you know, on the deportations, you're making a jump there. That I know this question was going to come up about the issue of deportations. Notwithstanding Archbishop Gomez's op-ed the other day, the bishops aren't quite there yet, and I'll tell you why. Because the minute that Obama stops the deportations, we're not looking at legislation for at least until another president is here. And the other president can just go the opposite way. Now, that's not to say that the bishops won't get there at some point when it becomes clear that we're not going to have a bill before the next president. But to do it now is premature, in my opinion, because what I laid out will all be out the window. Now, I know there's disagreement in the community over that, and there's probably even disagreement in the Catholic community over that. But that's where the bishops are right now, unless they start to change their mind. That there's still an action in the House that could happen. And if you do that prematurely, it's out the window for the next 3 years. And no matter how you look at it, legislation is something that really protects people if they get get it right. And it protects people for a long period of time. So what our talking points to the Pope will be, it might not necessarily be, we can stop the deportations. There's a lot of things that they can do short of sweeping a pen that they're not doing now.
Like what?
They could enhance prosecutorial discretion. They could stop expedited removal. I mean, there are a lot of things that they could be doing that they're not doing, and that hopefully they'll start doing. We're going to push them to do it. So I know there's disagreement on that, but in terms of the politics of it, if we call for deportation now, then we're giving up on the legislative aspects for at least 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, just the issue of deportation, as you know, happening over more than 1,000 people in a daily basis are being deported. I see myself every Friday for more than 6 years. And a majority of the people, I did my own personal interview to people every single Friday, and for what I talk, we can have NIJC, the one who can provide you specific topics, data, that would be at least 40 to 50% of people are non-criminal cases who are being deported. Those are the families who, most of them, 80% are from our parishes, and we're dealing this in a horrendous way.
And they have the tools to do that without him doing an executive action.
Yeah, the discretionary.
Yeah.
Thing,
And we need to push them to do that, certainly. But him doing a big executive action which would stay all deportations, which he says he doesn't have the authority to do anyway.
So if this is an issue, it's going to be dealing at that meeting, because Obama, it seems like that he's open. I know Senator Durbin said the same thing that you are saying from the political perspective. Why not to bring deportation? But this discretion that the ICE might have, or the judges might have, in non-criminal cases, which is a impeachment. We have a lot of numbers who could benefit if actually that is being implemented. It's not. And this was 2 years ago that they got this rule, and it's not happening. So maybe the church, as a moral voice, need to bring up this to actually happen. That would be.
We certainly will. I don't know, Father Cleet, did you want to say anything on this? You're more tied into this than I am. You might have a different perspective. So.
No, I was just saying to Don, this would be the perspective of the labor movement. So at this question of the deportations came up with the AFL-CIO immigration legislative folks just last week, and it's like, do we want to push the White House to stop the deportations? And I think that the conclusion at that table last week was there was not unanimity. There was no consensus, really. In fact, it would probably go the other way, to just say, no, we didn't get in this to fight the president on deportations, and that's, so I think that they just keep the powder dry on that question right now. Although some of the unions, Unite Here would be one, SCIU, I think maybe United Food and Commercial Workers, which are heavily immigrant unions, would probably be more inclined to push the president to stop the deportations. But the rest of the labor movement, I think, it sounds similar. Kind of, it's like, is this the moment to do it? And maybe as we get down the road, we'll fight that.
But one last point, though. I mean, if it comes to this point next year, it's a different story, I think. And actually, what the Republicans would have done is given Obama a gift, to sort of be the Lincolnian sort of savior of undocumented immigrants at that point. And frankly, from the political perspective, if I'm the administration, I think it's a fastball down the middle. But I don't think at this point it would be helpful to our overall goal. And I stand to be differed with, of course. So, thank you.